Hey guys, this video is for help with task one. I'm going to walk you guys through this to make sure you are successful on this. So if you do want to do task one and you're doing the speeches, here's what you need to know. Okay. So you go to task one. Okay. You will all receive this doc on your Google Classroom. It'll be on like the far right side where it says your work. It'll already have a doc that you have a copy of. All right. Task one, putting yourself in their shoes, different people and perspectives during industrialization. So in this project, you will review our unit over industrial America by selecting and incorporating, bringing in evidence from the sources over the positive and negative aspects of industrialization. This first one, you are a U.S. history professor at Princeton in 1914. You are tasked with giving a speech to get your class excited about all the changes associated with industrialization in America. So think about this, okay? So, using your source information from checkpoint one, pinpoint two major reasons why the United States experienced industrial growth. Okay, so you're giving a speech to class and you're like typing it out, and you're basically going to talk about why did the United States develop industrially like we did. So, you could talk about a number of things here. The shipment of goods that occurred because of the railroads. You could talk about more workers coming in through immigration. You could talk about the fact that the government passed policies that favored the businesses. All of these were factors that led to us having industrial growth and businesses doing very well. Okay. So that's the first thing you do. Then I want you to talk about why Americans should be excited about industry in America. Why is it a good thing that we have mass production and factories and all this stuff? So you could talk about how the price of goods went down, how jobs are being created, and then all these other things. This last part about how some of these sources of growth laid the foundation for the future of the industry, that's just talking about, like, you can mention like railroads, for instance. Okay. And it lays like the foundation because of all the shipment of goods. Oh, I forgot raw materials. We have a lot of raw materials too. So all those are factors you could discuss, and you just have to connect it to why we should be excited about industrialization. You're trying to like bring that energy into this speech, like I try to bring you guys every day. And some of you guys still fall asleep, and that's okay. All right. But just like get them excited in the speech that you're writing about why should we be excited that the United States is industrialized, and why have we industrialized? What has led us? Okay. Now, scenario two, the positive. Okay. You are the owner of a major steel plant in Pittsburgh and one of the most rich and successful people in all of America. In an interview with the newspaper, you are asked, how are you okay with the significant income gap in America because of industrialization? In other words, how are you okay with having so much more money than the average American? How is this beneficial to American society? So, you are going to use your sources over the positive aspects of industrialization. Now, this is like you don't have to quote these sources directly, okay? But you need to bring in the ideas from the sources, okay? So, like, it tells you to address the following. What can you provide for people because you own your own business? Well, you recall this is source one talking about job creation, okay? But here's what's going to be the difference between getting points and not getting points, okay? If you go into this and you just say, oh, I create jobs for people, okay, big deal. Why is it significant that people have a job? Like, what the role that you play in giving them a job, why is that so important? And remember, we talked about it. The great majority of mankind do not originate employments for themselves. They either have not the disposition or the ability to so originate and create their own employment. So what's the only way you can originate or create your own employment? Being self-employed. This is saying most people cannot afford to have their own business. So who do they depend on? An employer. The employer of labor is a benefactor. Whatever may the fault, it is the truth that the majority of mankind are employed by the minority. In other words, most people depend on a select group of people to be employers. Okay. But that's just an example. You got to go into that detail. You can't just leave that hanging. Um, Another thing, okay, with scenario two is like, what can you do with your wealth in order to help people? And what did Andrew Carnegie do? Well, you could talk about, the like Carnegie's philanthropy efforts, donating to libraries. And you could like, because you're a different person in this, right? You could be like, yeah, I take my money and I build dog shelters. I don't know. Just take that knowledge that we talked about like the gospel of wealth, right? Like rich people were supposed to, spread their wealth around, so to speak. They had to make money in order to donate it back to improve society. That was the basic idea of the gospel of wealth. So bring those ideas all in there, okay, and talk about how the price of goods is going down, all that jazz. Negative impacts of industrialization. This is a good one because you are a worker and you're trying to convince everybody it's time to go on strike. My wrist hurt. All right. So, in this one, you're just talking, this is like your industrialization is bad speech. So, you're talking about the conditions in the factories and how it's terrible and all of this stuff. So, what are the conditions in the factories like? I would highly recommend using A and C of your sources. Because remember, source A is the jungle. So, the rats and the sausage, easy to talk about. You can talk about how unsanitary the factories were and how industrialization was not all sunshine and roses because, you're eating rats, as evident in that part. And source C was the factory fire in New York with all the girls, and there was only one exit, so they all burned to death. So you can talk about how unsafe the factories were, and this was an example of this. According to source B, how were Carnegie's workers treated? Obviously, we talked about this in class. They were not paid enough. Okay, they were treated like slaves. The author of this article compared them to slaves. That's how poorly treated they were. And then somebody says, so you're kind of getting into your character. Somebody says, Andrew Carnegie is great. What would you say back to this person? Andrew Carnegie is great because he's donated all of these things to society and helped everybody. And what would you say to this person whenever your kids do not even have clothes because your wages are so low? And that's how Carnegie made his money. So just think about that, kind of interject yourself into that position. That is why this assignment is called putting yourself in their shoes. You are not you. You are becoming this person in history and you're thinking about this from their perspective. So outside, like the history professor, okay, you can go a lot of different ways with that. You can just be like, yeah, here's why we should be excited, yada, yada, yada. Here's why we grew. However, the positive aspects, you're not going to come out and say it's a terrible thing. It's a terrible thing I'm wealthy and have all this money. You're going to try to prove, hey, here's what I provide for people because I have a business and, the price of goods is going down and I donate my money back, all this stuff. And then a worker, you're putting yourself in their shoes and thinking about how terrible it was for the workers during this time of industrialization. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you, guys.